Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Thanks for joining our today's event. Today's event is a joint venture with Bailey and Swinburne Islamic Society. The title of the program is Believe, Achieve, Inspire. And the topic of today's lecture will be mental fitness for happier life. This talk will be given by Sister Monique. Sister Monique is a famous psychologist in Melbourne. She sits on Nasiha Consultancy and she do counseling over there. So inshallah, I'll pass it to Sister Monique to start today's event.
Okay, thanks for that. Assalamu alaikum. So I'm going to ask to give a talk today about mental fitness for a happy life. If you can't hear me because there's a bit of background noise, just do that, I won't be offended. I was thinking today around what it is in life that makes you happy, and I think sometimes if we reverse the title, then we think that we're given a life, we're here to be happy if we choose to be, we're here to be fit, again that's a choice, or to be mental. But if you put it front ways, then it's mental fitness for a happy life, or a happier life. Happiness is definitely a choice in many ways. Some people think that they have no control over how we feel, but indeed we actually have a lot of control. I just want to get a sense of, can you just put your hand up if you're at my talk last year? Because there's a little bit of overlap. Two of you? Okay. So forgive me, there's a titchy bit of overlap, but there's some new stuff in here too. So we go on the cursor. Well, we all know that, when there's essentially stress as a part of life. Can everyone see that? I think this little thing. Anyway, we'll see how we go. So stress and trauma are really a part of normal life. I think if we consider that trauma is not part of our life, that you're going to be disappointed when you come across it. Islamically, we're told to expect trauma. And we're not even just told to expect sadness, we're actually told to expect a level of trauma. So something that's actually quite shocking, and that can be the reaction. Okay, the psychological reaction of something that's shocking is trauma. So we're told to expect trauma, and actually in expecting it, you're more able to cope with it. I think sometimes we can get caught off guard in life, like a client I had this morning who was saying, he just got into a smooth patch in his life and then had a motorbike accident. And then for the next 2 years, he was recovering. And so I think sometimes we can travel along quite nicely and just think, life's going really, really good. But at the same time, we may not be preparing for the adverse event that's around the corner, probably for all of us, hopefully further away than closer. So mental fitness, when you think about it, there's an indication there that there's a level of resistance. If we put it in the context of a gym and we look at muscle fitness, that for a muscle to get bigger or stronger, you actually have to break it down first, yeah? So by doing excessive repetitions or by increasing weights, that actually breaks the muscle, it tears it to some extent. And in the healing, you get stronger, your muscles get stronger. Mental fitness is exactly the same type of concept. Okay, but the adversity is the resistance. The stress in life is the resistance. So you think that the stress might be making you weaker. Ideally, what it should be doing is making you stronger. But it depends on how you look at it. Okay, so just think about a muscle. The next time you face an adverse event, think about it like, all right, this is just the muscle that is my brain, and it's being torn a little bit, and that causes a bit of pain, a bit of negative emotion, anxiety, sadness, etc. But it's not meant to last forever. You're meant to be able to have some strategies to move forward and to convert the adversity into an opportunity. Okay, so that's what mental fitness is. Think about it, it's like this stretchy elastic band, and for you to get tougher, stronger, more determined, happier, you actually need that. So it's not let's cruise along in life and try to avoid everything that's adverse, because that's not what's going to make you happier. But hopefully today I'll just give you some almost like a strategy plan, because I'm fairly solutions focused. Okay, and it's not just, if I think about it, we say in psychology, people invest in shortcuts to happiness. A shortcut to happiness is a bar of chocolate. Well, that's mine anyway. Okay, it's a shortcut. Brings me happiness quickly, but as soon as I've eaten it, happiness gone. Okay? But what we would otherwise try and achieve is long-lasting, sustainable, higher levels of happiness. Okay? And some of the research in positive psychology says that if you invest in meaningful activities and where you get a better alignment between who you are as a person and your strengths and interests, that alone, if you can align activities with that, will bring you lasting, sustainable, authentic happiness. There was actually some research that showed two groups of people were in this research, and it was around what makes people happy. And they sent one group out and said, here's some money, go and do whatever you want with it. You can engage in any activity, you can buy whatever you want, and then they were to record how happy they were and how long they believed that happiness lasted for. Then they sent another group of people out to go and work in a charity organisation and to help people who were in need. Any ideas about who reported long-lasting happiness?
The latter one.
The latter one, right? So it's not about things. No thing, break down the word no, 2 syllables, no thing, nothing will make you happy. So no tangible object will give you long-lasting happiness. Okay? But you activating your strengths will. And we're going to have a look a little bit into what your strengths are, but we're actually going to tie it to well-being. Okay, so I'll be talking more to you today rather than about so much the concept of happy. I'll be talking about well-being. Because if you have good well-being, it equates to almost, you could say, well, you're probably going to sit in the feeling or the emotion of happiness more often. Now, everyone has a set thermometer, okay, for happiness. And so I have a friend who's actually way more, I would describe as quite cheerful. So she actually would sit up in her set range for happiness would be, in my opinion, higher than mine. And sometimes that can give us an illusion that other people are happier than I am. Therefore, I'm not happy, or I'm not happy enough. Okay? So comparison is a killer of joy. When we compare about anything, we compare to someone's car, we compare to someone's marks, we compare to someone's shoes, or someone's facial expressions or their sociability. We compare to anyone who we think is better than us. It's a killer of our joy. And yet the opposite is true. Sometimes when we get perspective and we compare down, we find joy. Someone has a car less than us, shoes less than us, marks less than us, and we go, oh yeah, I ain't too bad. I'm travelling along fine. So perspective is interesting, but you've got to know the inherent vulnerability in comparing. So, coming back to authentic happiness. So, it's important for you to start thinking about who you are. It's a very interesting question. And so if you think you're going to sit there in this audience right now and just not do anything except listen to me, I'm going to pose some questions to you. And whilst I have you in the audience, you're going to sit there and start thinking about this. Because otherwise you're just not going to get to the point where you even contemplate what I'm suggesting at the end, which is an intentional wellbeing plan. An intentional wellbeing plan. Okay? Wellbeing just doesn't rock up on your door or fall in your lap. It is absolutely something that you work towards like an assignment. Okay? Except there's no due date. And unfortunately, without the due date, it doesn't hold you accountable like the assignment. But it's interesting when people find themselves accountable when they face massive stress levels, or they find themselves being unwell, the flu keeps hitting them because their immune system's low, or they end up in hospital with some illness. And then you start going, oh, there's the accountability, right? Because your lack of attention to your well-being now becomes your problem, okay? In a way that you can't avoid. So I'm going to start off the talk today focusing on what happens when people don't have well-being. So some of this is a little bit of an overlap from what I did last year, which is sort of the rise of things like anxiety and depression. I won't go into it for too long, but then I'll cover what well-being is. Okay. So some of you might recall this if you attended last year. It's just a mood exploration. It's like a little thermometer, and in any one day we might sit in many, if not all of those moods, minutes, hours, etc. The goal is not to sit in any of the negative ones for too long, because they're drainers. Okay. And the goal is that if you are sitting in any of those negative ones for too long, and I know it's a horrible colour, but it says anxious is the yellow one. If you are sitting there for too long, then it could start to impair your functioning in the day. It could start to give rise to things like procrastination at school. It just seems too much, so you just don't do it. But then you get to the point where it's due the next day and you have no choice, you have got to get it done. And then you're freaking out about it. And that could turn into a panic. Okay. Similarly to sad. Now, all the emotions are God-given. We have this huge capacity to do emotion as human beings. We can do emotion. And it's a really interesting concept that I talk about with clients to say, can you do sadness? Like if people go, I'm feeling sad, I hate this feeling. And I'm like, yeah, but can you do it? Like, can you tolerate it? It's not nice, granted. But once you start saying, you know what, I almost ironically feel a little bit more comfortable in saying, I can do sadness, and then I can get over it. As in, then I can let it go, because I can shift my thinking or shift my focus and behaviours, and sadness goes away. But think about what all the emotions actually do. Okay, think about what they do for us. Emotions keep you alive. If you didn't have anxiety, you'd walk across the road, you wouldn't look left or right, and you'd be hit by a bus. So some level of anxiety keeps you alive. And it certainly does at a biological level. But even for us to navigate our social environment, it keeps us safe and alive, and that's its role. However, for some people, the dial on their anxiety, the volume is up too high. And it impairs their ability to connect with people socially. Sometimes it creates a whole lot of self-doubt and a whole lot of what-ifs play out. What if this happened? What if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? And you start to notice lots of danger in the environment. Okay, it keeps you on hyper alert. So it's useful, but not to sit in it for too long. Because if you sit in anxiety for too long, it causes fatigue. Okay, literally, your body gets fatigued. Okay, and you want to sleep more because things are overwhelming, and then you go, why am I feeling so lethargic and tired? Because it literally, too much cortisol in your system fatigues the body. Okay, same with adrenaline. If you're noticing danger in the environment, even when things are not actually dangerous, there's no tiger in the room, but it's just you're noticing all these things that worry you, fatigue is what is number one. And we know what are the really common sense type of things. If you're tired, you don't concentrate well, your memory starts to lapse. You don't feel like going out. You don't feel like engaging in the activities that you would otherwise normally engage in. Okay, sport, going out, having fun, etc. So unfortunately, that's at the point where we might see impairment, and we don't want that to happen. So if we look at sad though, for people, if they sit in, sadness is this emotion that says to you, one or two things aren't right in your environment. Okay, one or two things aren't right. One or two needs are not being met. That's what sad's communicating to you. But sometimes when we feel sad, we don't realise what it's doing to us. We just feel it. But if you can start to analyse, okay, well, I feel sad, so what's going on? What's going on? Is there an obvious explanation for why I feel sad? Or actually, is there an absence? Is there no explanation? Like, actually, everything's going fine, my grades are great, family's good, getting married soon, going overseas, whatever. I should be feeling happier, and I'm not. And that can sometimes give you a bit of a warning signal of something like depression, if there's no reason, and if that sadness just doesn't go away for 2 weeks or more. So it says, actually, there could be something chemically going on in my body that I'm not aware of, or that's new. And so that's something to pay attention to, and maybe have a chat to your doctor about. Lonely. Okay. Lonely, what does lonely communicate? Anyone?
Talking about yourself.
You by yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Talking with yourself.
Talking with yourself? Sometimes. So when we're lonely, the antidote for lonely in many respects, is to connect socially. So none of us were born in a cave, I don't think. As in, we weren't born alone. We're born as social beings. Literally, we're attached to our mother. We are social beings. So, but sometimes we can be in a university of people and feel lonely, which just really suggests that you lack connection with the people, or you lack deep connection with the people. People might go, hi, 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 but you're not, there's no connection, there's no trusting relationship, there's no purpose or meaning to a relationship that you might have. It might just be collegial, or you have a peer relationship, but it's not close enough, and that's why you might feel alone. Okay, so think about this. So they're all communicating something to you. Okay? Anger, interesting emotion. Okay? It communicates to you that there's an injustice present in your life, or there's a disappointment, but you feel very strongly about the disappointment. Now, and sometimes that can be a perceived disappointment, or actually a real disappointment. Sometimes it can even be perceived injustice as opposed to actually a real injustice. Okay? I'll give you an example. A perceived injustice is something where you might think that someone looks at you funny on campus, and you think that was a negative look, or why did they look at you that way? So it's a perceived injustice because you actually can't 100% know exactly what that person was thinking at the time that you looked at them and they looked at you and they gave you, and you've interpreted that as a funny, negative look. So unless you went up to the person and said, did you look at me funny? Do you have a problem? And they go, yes, I do. I don't like your face. Then it might be a real injustice, but barely any of us are going to do that anyway. So, but with all of them, with all the negative emotions, and I'm sure there's more, but these are the common ones that people struggle with in their day, there's strategies. There are so many strategies to deal with this. If you just do a Google search and you say how to combat anxiety, you will get a host of very, very coolly designed, very interactive websites that are designed to help and support people to recover from anxiety. And I usually tell clients one of the easiest things to recover from, because there are just so many really effective strategies out there. Do you want to have any questions about anxiety just while we're touching on it? Because I'm going to move forward. No? If you feel uncomfortable asking as a group, you can feel free to write them down and just shoot them over here, and I'll grab them as I go. As I said, anxiety keeps you alive. Just interesting graphics. I don't know if you can see that. Little Ninja Warrior things, Lego. But when we're stressed, I say this to people, often if a tiger comes in the room and it looks at me and I think that I have a chance I will run, okay? And in fact, I'm more likely to run if it looks at you, because I know I'm not in danger. So if it looks at any of you, I'm going to run. If it looks at me, you guys run, okay? But if it does look at me and it looks at me like it's about to attack me, I will freeze. My body will freeze me. And it's one of the highest levels of anxiety, okay, is when you experience a freeze-like motion. If you hear something outside your bedroom window and you think, oh my God, is someone breaking in? You're like, where's the phone? But actually, even if you wanted to, at some points, your body will not respond to you, because your body will override your cognitions and say, actually, you need to freeze, otherwise you're dead. So your body will override your mind and not move you in certain situations of intense fear, which is quite scary when you think about it. Okay. Or, like my little ninja warriors down here, or you'll fight. If the tiger does jump on me, I will fight it. I will lose, but I will fight it because it's about survival at that point. Okay. So, as I said, anxiety, it's around keeping you alive, and they're one of the most common. You might hear it commonly as fight or flight, but there's also freeze. Okay? So I've gone through some of this stuff. I won't go into it too long, but common feelings associated with anxiety: confused, worried, nervous, scared, tired, irritable, angry. A lot of guys who might express anger on the street actually are quite anxious and insecure. It's just a mask. Physical symptoms: blushing, trembling, heart racing, sleeping difficulty, sweating, shaking hands, shortness of breath, dizziness, butterflies in the stomach. If you have all of those, it actually might look like a panic attack. If you have all of those at once, and you've got shortness of breath and you feel like you're going to die, that's called a panic attack. So I see a lot of people in my clinic saying, oh, I've got panic, I had a panic attack, and I go, oh yeah, what'd that look like? And they go, oh, you know, like I had racing heart and trembling hands. And I go, that's some anxiety symptoms, but it's not a panic attack, okay? So just be careful, because what happens is when people go, I have a panic attack, like I don't have a panic attack, so I'm not going to go out to avoid the panic attack. But they're not having it, so they're actually catastrophizing two anxiety symptoms and making it like it's something that's more serious than what it is, which then just adds to the worry, okay? So, and most of us at any time, put your hand up if you've ever had any of those symptoms, at any point in your life. Yep, so almost, you know, a good half have admitted to it. But what happens is just before you go into an exam, or if you've got, you know, you might be doing taekwondo and you've got gradings, or, you know, you have to perform on the field, whether it's footy or soccer or something, and there's an energy that rises, or even public speaking, okay? There's an energy that rises up that allows you to deliver and to perform, whether it's for the exam, public speaking, or on the footy field. So you've got to think about it. That's what the energy is helping you to do. It's not harming you. But sometimes we'll go, oh, I hate public speaking because of all the anxiety symptoms that come up. Okay? Just think about it as this energy helping you to actually perform and deliver your message. Okay. So they're just some behaviours of what it actually might look like. If you have anxiety and it starts to impair your functioning, you don't want to go out, you don't want to talk to people, trouble sleeping, you want to be by yourself, easily frightened or startled, get angry easily or yell at people when you feel nervous. And some common thinking. They'll think that I'm boring, they'll think that I'm dumb, I can't stand these scary feelings. What will people think of me? So a preoccupation with what other people think of you, or thinking that they think badly of you in some way, and lots of what ifs. Any sentence in your head that starts with what if will generate anxiety or worry. So catch yourself what ifing and go, okay, stop it. Okay. When people say to me, why did I get this anxiety for? I swear I could give them almost 1,000 reasons, because there are just so many things that influence why people experience anxiety. They're just some common ones. So hereditary or neurobiological causes, lack of movement and exercise, believe it or not, caffeine, sugar, excessive junk food consumption. I remember I had a guy once, I was counselling him, and he had anxiety quite bad, and then one day it was just off the scale, and I said, by chance, do you drink coffee? And he goes, oh yeah, I have about 20 double shots a day. And I go, that might explain the increase in anxiety, and the anxiety to begin with. So maybe cut back. So absolutely, what we put in our bodies can affect our mood. Pressured lifestyle. Mum and dad are worriers. Therefore, they teach you how to worry. Okay? If you've got one anxious parent, and it's one anxious parent that says, don't do this, be careful, don't climb on the couch, you might fall off, you know, and is always concerned about potential danger in the environment, then what do they teach you? As the child, you hear that there's lots of danger in the environment, so be careful because you might get hurt. And then over time, that can stop you from doing anything adventurous whatsoever. And the first time you have to do something adventurous, like do an exam, it's not adventurous, but you have to be able to learn to cope with the feelings of nervousness, or doing something a little bit risky, or that there's an outcome, a pass or a failure related to it, that you may not be prepared well enough. Okay, so just think about that. Low self-confidence, a complicated, overly busy lifestyle. And that involves the use of too much technology and not enough downtime. Okay, I'm so guilty of this. But it's something that we can all sort of just become a little bit more mindful of if you feel like, you know what, I just need to be in a quiet space, or I need to get away from people, or I just need to sit in a cafe and read a book. Okay, then you've got to think about strategies. So notice the feeling, do something about it. Okay, I'm going to go through depression really quickly because I want to focus on well-being. Okay, I've mentioned some of these before, but I'll just quickly go through it just to keep an eye out for. And you know what, like it's really important for you to keep an eye out for your mates and for your friends and family members if you see that they're in a bit of a rut emotionally, that you think things are going pretty well for the person, but they just, aren't really demonstrating much joy or happiness. So sort of, touch base with people and say, "You okay?" There's actually a day called "Are You Okay?" day. And that's really important, because sometimes people are not okay and they are not going to volunteer that information. Okay, and just by checking in with them, like be the good friend to someone, because you don't have to be a psychologist, but being a good friend can be as good as a good psychologist, because it's about the relationship you have with someone and it's about listening, okay, and maybe giving them a different point of view on their issues. But in terms of symptoms, your appetite can either decrease or increase significantly, okay, and you might see that through weight gain or weight loss. Restless, agitated or slowed down, basically you just can't be bothered with life. Depleted energy, complain of feeling tired all the time, influences some cognitive abilities like concentration, having difficulties thinking, or you're indecisive and you can't make up your mind about anything, even though you might have been able to be quite decisive and make decisions, but things shift. Feeling worthless or feeling guilty about things that really actually aren't your fault, but you start sort of taking on board negativity, and it can be other people's negativity as well, to the point that people can feel really helpless and then believe that life's not worth living, and suicide is a presentation, it's a feature of what a depressive diagnosis might look like. And not everyone has it, and that doesn't have to be a feature for you to have depression. So if someone says, "Oh, well, I'm not going to kill myself," but that doesn't mean they're not depressed, because they can have some of the other symptoms, okay? Behaviours. You don't want to go out, don't want to talk to people. Essentially, you're pulling away. But let's get across to this wellbeing model that I like right now. I thought that might not show up here because of the white. Not much I can do about it. Okay. I'm going to talk through a wellness model. Some little bit of reasons for it, but also how to actually action it. And if we look at ourselves, it's called the indivisible self holistic model. It sort of means that there are different parts to ourselves, and like I said before, we don't live in a cave. We live in a context, and our context can influence our well-being, for good and for bad. So I've got different layers of a circle here, and you're in the middle. Down here it says yourself, and it's across the lifespan. Even you might have noticed that we shift significantly from being the child to the adolescent to the young adult to the adult, middle-aged, and then more senior. So even our lifespan alone can influence our level of well-being depending on what's going on for us. Okay, so as that can actually mitigate it, it can make things better, it can make things worse. Okay, just the lifespan development. The next level is family and friends. Okay, that's pretty obvious. We know that, as children, grow up across time, lots of things can shift in their family and friends. They could be, as a child, bullied when they're at school, or they could have awesome friends. And either of those two factors are going to influence their well-being. And as you get up into adulthood, again, you might have friends from high school, or you've met friends at uni and you've got a good circle around you, and that alone is going to support your well-being. Okay, it's a very strong driver for well-being. Again, family. Family, well, sometimes when we get to adulthood, we either move out of home or we move countries to study, or we're still living with them, but the dynamic shifts because the expectations and the responsibility on our shoulders shifts. So maybe that can compromise our well-being. As I spoke to someone today who said that, his dad became absent for a particular reason, and at 15, he had to drop out of school and then support family and pay the mortgage and things like that. And he's like 15 years old. Okay, he's 25 now. And so sometimes life dictates that people have to step up and take responsibility that you or I may not think that a 15-year-old is responsible for, but they step up and do it anyway. And that can affect well-being actually across, his life. Then we've got next layer is sort of like our social, or our social formal social context, which is, say, for you guys, university, and it can be work as well. The next layer are things like community, government and institutions. Now, they have an effect on our well-being, and we see that playing out right now. That for different groups, whatever is going on at a governmental level, a policy level, can shift people's perception of ease in life, difficulty in life, or depending on how sensitive you are, people can really internalise it and think, wow, I feel really alienated by some of the rhetoric that's going on right now. This is a bit, horrible. And that sometimes, that environmental level can affect us and our well-being or our ability to deal with problems. And I hear it quite a lot, actually, just talking with people in the community, that there's so much going on, even through Ramadan and Eid. Put your hand up if you really, if this Eid or this Ramadan was different to any other Ramadan because of what's going on internationally. Did anyone internalise it and feel a little bit, just slightly overwhelmed by all the stuff that's going on in the world and not at ease because you don't feel entirely well if you know that, certain people from different countries are really suffering quite badly and there's a level of helplessness that people in Australia can feel with that. So at an international level, what goes on internationally can actually feel our sense of, well, you know what, I've got uni and I've got work and I've got a debt to pay and I've got, family issues to deal with and now there's this international context that could just be adding on and taking a few units of your energy out. Okay. And there was also a lot, because a lot of people will immerse themselves in that context online, okay, by reading articles or seeing, newspaper clippings or certain, coverage from places overseas that impact your psychology, okay? And I think we've got to be mindful about self-censorship if you feel like your cup's sort of full or bordering on full. Does everyone know what I mean by that? If you look at it, that we have an emotional bank account, but sometimes if our emotional bank account is being depleted by our investments in school and friendships and so forth, and we're not getting too much back, that the empty space in the cup can represent the possibility for negative emotion. It can be resentment, or it could be anxiety or depression or that type of thing, or just dissatisfaction in life. And then you add something in an international context, like what goes on in Gaza, and you read too many articles on that on one night, and then you're like, oh my God, what is going on in the world? And some people will throw out blanket statements like, it's just too much, or the world's a horrible place to live in. And you can start to see how the negativity is starting to affect their psychology. Okay, it's starting to deplete otherwise optimistic and hopeful resources that they might otherwise have. And that's where you've got to start to think about, what do you have that's going to keep you on the up so that you don't allow any of this at any level to get you down? Or if you notice that it gets you down, how do you bounce back and use resilience? Okay, that ability to bounce back after you've been knocked. So if we look at the model, any change in any part of the wellness system can be beneficial to the person, but it can also damage the person at multiple dimensions of wellness. We can have a positive choice for living well in one area of life, but it can have implications for other areas of our life, like our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. A person might be functioning well, but then they experience a major flood. The flood is at the context or the environmental level, which is on the outside, or a personal trauma. But then you have to look at, well, what resources do I have? What are my assets? We have different types of assets. I'm not talking about a car and a house and money in the bank. I'm talking about your internal assets to move past the challenges. So I say a lot, self-knowledge is power. Self-knowledge is power because the more that you know about yourself, both your strengths and areas of improvement, the more you can absolutely navigate life and what it throws at you. So when people talk about, and people have, ever since I got out of uni and started counselling teenagers and that type of thing, when I first left uni, there's a lot of talk about self-esteem and young people having, high self-esteem, low self-esteem, or this kid has low self-esteem and that's the cause of all their problems and that type of thing. But it's a little bit abstract, the concept of self-esteem. It means the value that you place on yourself. It sounds sort of egotistical, but the definition that I like to have is when is in a what I describe an authentic self-esteem or an authentic understanding of who we are, but based on what our strengths are. Okay. Maybe if I could have 2 volunteers, I will demonstrate something. Anyone? Game enough? Let the anxiety pass you. 2 volunteers. Just to ask a question. I'm not going to get you to do any tricks or anything. Yes? And I need a sister. Got to balance it out. You won't be on camera. I'll do it over here. Any sister. Thank you. Come on down up the front. Okay, put this on camera. Okay, your name?
Metal.
I think it's like, thanks more. Your name?
Saha.
Saha. Okay, we have Meta Saha. I'm going to ask a very simple question, which is, what are your strengths? Can you tell me?
My strengths are getting up in the morning. I like getting up early in the morning and working till late at night also, and hardworking.
Hardworking, yeah.
And sometimes like isolation too much. Isolating and getting happiness from it.
Okay. So, okay, that's interesting. Okay, happy, I'll put down. Right. Anything else?
Anything else? If I focus on something, I can do in the best of times. I can do.
Focus. Okay. Focus and excellence. Okay. That's very good. Okay, don't sit down yet. And Saha, yours?
Okay. My strengths are that I'm very positive. I'm organised, and I try to maintain a balanced lifestyle. Usually full of energy.
Okay. Any more?
What else? Helpful.
Helpful.
Yeah,
You're doing very well.
Yeah.
You're doing very well. So this is very interesting. The question that I've asked them only usually gets asked where? Interviews. Only place. Which is quite a shame, really, because we actually use more of our character strengths on the outside of an interview than in the interview itself. Okay. But the question is, how much do these guys know about themselves to articulate it? You've done very well, because, and so have you, because many people only actually usually give me one strength, and particularly as I've got them up the front. Now there's a couple of things, there's a dynamic going on because I've pulled them up the front. So there's a couple of things playing out, which is one is humility. If someone stood up here and went, well, I am awesome, I'm creative and I'm organised and, you know, I'm resilient and I'm hardworking, and they went on and on and on and on, what would you guys be thinking? Show off. Overconfident, they love themselves, arrogant, like all these negative things, because someone is able to articulate their strengths, but I'm not getting them to articulate it for any egotistical purpose. I want them to know what their strengths are, so in the face of adversity they can call on one of their resources or assets, okay? Which is what I define as authentic self-esteem. Okay, none of us are perfect. None of us have, we have amazing strengths, but we absolutely have areas of improvement. And you've done very well, Saha, because no one actually usually gives me 5. Only people usually give, the majority of people give me 2, and then they stop. And so, and the other thing is, it's about how much can we just, what is our strength vocabulary? Okay. Do we actually have a set of words that we can draw on when we need to describe what solution we need in the moment that we need it? So for instance, if you know that at a particular time you need to demonstrate hope or optimism, do you know that about yourself? And can you say, you know what, Monique, you just have to be optimistic and you've got to look for the positive. Okay? And if I know that, thank you so much, thank you. If you know that you have particular strengths off by heart, okay, like 5, a top 5, that you can start to use these in different situations. And as soon as you know that, so if you know that you're creative and there's a task in a group setting or in a workplace where creativity is necessary, if you identify as creative, you will put your hand up for the task authentically. Okay, it will be easy for you and most likely you'll have some success in it. Okay, So knowing our strengths helps us also to identify opportunities in our environment that create and foster wellness. But I'm going to break it down a little bit in terms of, well, what would a well-being plan look for you if you left the room today and you went, yeah, that was interesting, good on you, Monique, but you left and you didn't do anything with your wellness, then really you've probably wasted about an hour already. Okay? So think about one thing that you can do, even just the smallest thing that you can do to shift your well-being in a positive way, in a positive direction. Firstly, I want you to ask yourself this question. Do you have a sense of wellness? Okay. Do you have a sense of wellness? Do you ever even think about your wellness, or do you only think about it when you're sick? And then you go, oh, I wish I was well. And for the majority of people, that's what they do. They get sick and then they wish for wellness. And then when they're well, they ignore the wellness. And they don't pay attention to too many things that would contribute to ongoing wellness, so that they don't return to a position where they get sick. Now, some things we can't help, colds, flus, etc. But we still can minimise colds, flus by watching our stress levels, washing our hands, like absolutely basic common sense things. But again, if you're not aware of being well, or if you take it for granted, then you won't do anything preventatively. Okay. I'm not sure of the statistics exactly, but when people get prescribed medication, the adherence or compliance to medication that they are prescribed to keep them well is so low. People are so ad hoc when it actually comes to taking prescribed medication, or they're just generally negligent. Take it one day. I had a client this morning say, yeah, that medication I told you I was going to start, I took one. It's meant to be a whole course, like 6 months worth. I took one tablet. Good job. It's a start. Okay. If you do have a sense of your wellness, like, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. Like, internally, you're creating a little story in your head that I feel all right. So when people say to you, how are you today? And you go, yeah, fine. Do you just espouse the words? Do you just go, yeah, fine, and inside you're like dying, or you're falling apart, but you articulate fine? Or do you actually feel fine? Okay, it's a pretty good demarcation of where you are on the wellness scale. Okay, is there some agreement between your words and actually how you feel, or is it just so socially polite to just say fine? I mean, it'd be a bit weird sometimes if you do it with some lecture or something. How are you? I'm not well, and then fall apart. But think about that. Think about what you need then to resolve that. Okay. What I might get you to do is to write down some wellness strengths. So none of you have started here today with nothing. You all got here to the seminar fine. So this is an indication that some of you are pretty well, okay? Or you're functioning at some level that you got yourselves here today. So can you maybe write down if you want, because you've got to start to go, well, where am I? Because some people just don't focus on their wellness. And quite honestly, a lot of this can be influenced by what happened in our family of origin. If you had parents or caregivers who were really on you about brushing your teeth and getting to bed on time and developing a routine and eating well and don't eat too much junk food or that type of thing, then that will hopefully filter down into your wellbeing practices in a day. So think about what you already have. I've just given you a few hints. So some people have got their phones out. I don't know if they're Facebooking or whether they're actually writing notes. I'll assume you're writing notes, okay? And just write down a couple of things. What have you already got that's working well for you? Okay, I'll give you a few minutes to do that. You got 2 minutes. Okay, so we're going to come back. All right. I think it's a good start. Can people just randomly yell out a couple that they've written down? Anyone?
Just for today or general? We need to
In general. In general. So where are you starting out with your wellness? What type of well-being strengths do you already have? Yes.
my strength and my wellness is I don't have any question, any animosities against anyone, so I'm pretty much feeling satisfied.
I like that one. That's a great one to start off with. That's around not having any animosities towards other people. What a great way to start, okay? Any other ones? Anyone? Anything at all? Yes. Feeling healthy. Absolutely. So you've got a self-appraisal that you feel healthy. Okay? And I'm assuming I'll randomly, call some out, but and we'll go into this a little bit in more detail about the value of these. But things like just eating well, drinking water, walking around a bit more, getting at least 6 to 8 hours of sleep a night, things like that. Okay, they're all awesome, very sustainable well-being practices, and they will absolutely have an implication on your health and well-being for the rest of your life if you're doing it now. Okay. So what is building an intentional wellness plan? I think you've got to be sort of honest with yourself, and quite frankly, wellness and health is not my strong point even for me, and I absolutely know that. I'm driven by many other things. In fact, I'd probably rather go out and, work or play with my kids or create a new product or something like that. I would be more energized to do that than to focus on my well-being. That's my issue. And so I have to be more conscious of it. I actually have to keep doing things that bring it to the surface for me to keep it in my view. So you don't have to, it's not natural for everyone to have a health and well-being focus, because we have many other focuses in our life, which you might rate as equally important. But what it is honest to do is to go, well, where am I? Can I self-evaluate the value of wellness in my life? Now, a common sense answer is, 10. 10, we should all be valuing it. But the truth is, you may not be through your actions. And if you're one of those people that have been saying for such a long time, I need to go to the gym, or I need to eat more apples, or I need to cut down on this junk food, or I need to sleep more, okay? If you're the person that's been saying that, you can tell it's not 10, because if it was 10, you'd be doing those things. So if it's anything down, but just give yourself a bit of a number. Where do you think you value yourself, on what scale? 1 is, it is so unimportant for me to focus on my well-being. I don't need to focus on it at all, because it's not valued, okay? You might have good well-being and therefore you think, therefore I don't need to focus on it. That means you're taking it for granted. Or 10 to mean, actually, I think it's really important and it's actually crucial to my functioning. And so I value it there. So you give yourself a little score of where you think you're actually at on a scale of 1 to 10. And then, depending on whatever your number is, you just try and go up the scale. If it's 1, you go to 2, 2 to 3, etc. 8 to 9, wherever you are. Okay, and just do your best. We've had a little bit of a look at your well-being strengths, and over the next couple of slides, I'll show you a little bit more how to dig deeper with that. Honestly appraise areas for improvement. And I was talking to someone today and they said that as productive and busy as they were, they didn't have goals. And if you don't have goals, it's basically like jumping in your car and going around a roundabout a lot of times because you've not decided which direction to head out. Okay? And then when you do, you go, oh, that's right, I'm going to go that way. Okay, and even then it's so random, you've wasted a fair bit of time. So think about setting goals for your well-being, because you're actually more likely to hit it. And don't just have the goals. People often say, oh yeah, I've got the goals, they're in my head. Well, how often do you check the notepad that's in your head around whether you've actually ticked off the goal of well-being or whatever the specific goal was? So write it down, type it up, whatever, put it somewhere where you can reference back to it. Okay? And keep it simple. Okay? This is not a gym plan. This is not a personal training plan. This is a well-being plan. So really keep it simple. Okay? But also with any goal that you're going to achieve, keep it specific as possible. People often go, I'm going to get healthier. What does that look like? Does get healthier look like eat an apple a day, but have junk food every night? Like, is that, you know, so be, you know, keep it simple, but be specific as well. Just so that you can go, you know what, actually my goal was to eat more fruit, and you know that's going to contribute to your health, so tick it off. It's something that you can sort of measure and hold yourself accountable for. How many pieces of fruit did I have today? How many pieces of fruit did I have in the week? Is that better than the week before? So you can see some improvement, okay? Or walk more. It's measurable. I usually walk about half an hour in the day, so walk 35 minutes. That was better than last week. Okay, so keep it simple. All right, there's five dimensions. And so this is some research, and I'm going to try and get through these pretty quick. How long have I got, by the way? What time do you want to go? More the point. Like 10 minutes. 10 minutes? Anyone? I'll go for 10 minutes because we're already a bit over. All right, so research says basically the more religious you are, the more you use practices of spirituality equals having positive attitudes and better mental health. Lots of research says this, okay? But it's all relatively new research. We have anecdotal evidence, clearly, about 1,400 years worth or more, but this is about research, so this is pretty good. Gender identity. They've found that basically if you can identify some gender-related strengths, like if you can go, myself as a woman, I have these particular strengths which I describe as feminine. If you can own that, it actually contributes to well-being. In a similar way, if you can identify and own masculine strengths, and you might have role models that you can model, that might be models of resilience. If you have role models in your life where you can copy how people cope with tough times, that's going to lead to better well-being. Okay. Cultural identity. This is a really interesting one. So it means a positive attitude towards one's cultural identity. And we know culture is, and I'm certainly not just referring to ethnicity when I'm talking about culture, but it can refer to things like age, even gender is part of our cultural identity, ethnicity, faith. There's a few other, different things that can define culture. But it's certainly, if you identify strongly with whatever culture or cultures, and you feel positive about that, that contributes to wellness. However, if you identify negatively with your cultural background, and you go, I wish I wasn't whatever, it leads to negative mental health. So the concept of owning who you are, owning the skin that you're in, is really positive towards positive mental health. Now, sometimes we can draw on positive cultural scripts. Anyone heard of this phrase before? Cultural script? Basically, they're the unwritten rules of how to do things, like whether it's how to have a children's birthday party or the script that comes along with getting married. Okay, it's the to-do, it's the we do this first, etc., etc., etc. Okay, they're little scripts. Like you might have a script for, there's a script for Jummah prayer, isn't there? Okay, and your script could be culturally influenced. You might do something, and culture could just come from your family of origin. That on Jummah Day we do this, and we start with this, and we do that, and da-da-da-da. It becomes a routine. And so if someone in your family or a friend deviates from the script, often our first thought is think, oh, they're wrong. That's different. That's not good. Or different equals bad. As soon as they deviate from the cultural script, we think that that's bad. The truth is, when we come from in terms of us coming from family of origins, and each family, let alone culture, has their own cultural scripts for how to do things in the day. But sometimes they're unhelpful. Because sometimes the cultural scripts are around making things like anger shameful. Okay. Or they connect and mismatch emotions, or the script of the family is to cut someone off if they abuse the family. Okay. Now we have a whole lot of Islamic scripts for how to do things and how not to do things. Not that everyone follows that. That would be in their best interest. But the truth is families deviate from Islamic scripts for how to do things, including well-being. So the Islamic script for how to do well-being might look like don't overeat. But in your family, the family script could be eat everything that's on your plate and more, because otherwise you'll offend my mother. Okay? So the script could deviate. So you've got to think about, well, which scripts do I actually need to challenge? Okay? In our families, we have awesome binding cultural scripts that completely support our well-being, and yet in some families they are toxic and they absolutely contribute to mental health issues, not well-being. So sometimes as an individual you've got to go, which scripts are really working and which scripts need to be challenged and perhaps rewritten. The social self, dimension 2. The social self is about connection to other people, very obvious, spoke about it before, developing friendships, love, and that can just be maintaining a loving relationship with your family members, with your parents, siblings, etc., or indeed a partner as you get married. Okay? And because it's all connected to absolutely strong well-being. As soon as you feel like you're in a trusting relationship with someone where that results in intimacy and mutual sharing or mutual giving to each other, that absolutely contributes to positive well-being. Dimension 3, coping self. When we can't change something in our life, we can only cope with it. We can cope with it in healthy ways or harmful ways, that's the truth. People can get, people who can go through a car accident can basically cope with it in a healthy way by being surrounded by their loved ones, eating properly, trying to exercise where they can, go swimming if you can't move your body properly, watch funny movies, keep healthy, read books, etc. You can cope in healthy ways with something that happens to you that lands you with some level of decreased mobility, like if you're in hospital. Or you can cope with it in unhealthy ways or harmful ways, which you can overuse painkillers and sleeping tablets, and you can distance yourself from everyone, and you can self-down, and you can blame someone else for the accident, and that's coping done in a healthy way. It's coping, just staying healthy, because it causes you secondary issues. You have a choice. So a good question to ask yourself at any point, any point of stress that you face is, what am I thinking? Is it helpful or harmful? Is it helpful or harmful? Okay, in any situation that you're in, is my thinking helpful or harmful? Okay, it's harmful if you feel any of those negative emotions. And I guarantee you, if you feel any of those negative emotions, you're telling yourself harmful things or irrational things, 100%. So if you're feeling any negative emotion, your brain is rolling out a script or playing a CD in your head that is negative and not useful to you. So press pause or stop, eject, and put in another one that's more helpful. What can I tell myself about this story that's going to help me to cope with it? That's going to help me to restore my feeling hope and optimism and returning to a place of happy faster. Okay? You're actually actively challenging in the same way that you would do if you watch something on TV and something that you don't want to watch comes on. Now, if we can be bothered and we really don't like what comes on, we change the channel. You have to learn to do the same thing in your head. Okay? You can change the channel of the story that you're telling yourself about whatever situation it is, whatever stress. I failed an assignment. Someone yelled at me on the street. A friend doesn't want to be my friend anymore. I didn't get the job. Whatever situation comes up, you will have automatic scripts playing out in your head. Challenge them and reframe them. What else can I tell myself? And if you get stuck in playing the negative CD, which you can, because when you get kicked in the guts, it's very hard to stop intrusive thinking, as in that CD that just won't shut up. And you're like, oh my God, I have to stop telling myself this. And at that point, try and do something with your behaviour. Go watch a movie, go to the mosque, go for a walk, go make something, go cook something, okay? Talk to someone. So you have to do something where you're out of your head and in your hands, you're out of your head and you're in your body. So do something in a behavioural way, okay? And that can stop some of that rumination. Rumination is like replaying. Like someone said something nasty to you and you can't get it out of your head. Has anyone had that? Or something happens to you that's unexpected and you're like, I didn't see that coming. And then you start replaying all these different scenarios for how you would do that situation differently, or what you would say to that person if they said it to you again. So just think, it's absolute power to be able to do that, but it takes practice. And it comes down to also realistic beliefs, okay? But though, in terms of coping, we can look at things you can do in your leisure. Okay, some people just don't have any activities in their life that they consider leisure. Okay, whether that's hanging around or going to a cafe with people or going to the library or any hobbies whatsoever. Okay, so don't forget that, because you had them as a child. And if you think, oh, I don't know what I'm interested in, think back to what it was like when you were a child, because whatever you enjoyed as a child, most likely you'll still enjoy doing. Okay, as in along the lines of. I still see 25-year-olds playing the PS or DS or whatever, and they're like, I enjoy it. And I'm like, that's great. You probably won't when you're 35. You'll have to find something else. But the concept of play, the play dimension, will still be important even if you're 35 or 45. Just got to shift the play. Okay, 2 dimensions left. Creative self. In the corporate world, creativity, the word is not used. Innovation is. Be innovative. Do something different. Okay. But again, it comes down to thinking differently. Think outside the square. Do emotions differently. Know that you can challenge the emotion. Control. Control is a really interesting one. So if you feel in control of your situation, most people have better well-being. As soon as a certain level of freedom is taken away from us, or we feel controlled in a way, our well-being will drop. Okay, so as soon as, but be mindful that oppression is real, not just in a contextual society space, but also in our head. And I often say that sometimes Muslims can oppress themselves, but with our thinking. With our thinking, we oppress ourselves. Okay, so don't hold yourself back by limiting beliefs, is what I'm saying. And people with wellbeing don't try and control other people. Rather, they feel an internal control, so they can allow people to be who they are. It's really important. And people who do control people around you, that's not freedom, and you won't achieve well-being in that. Even if you think you're meeting your needs, you won't eventually. It won't last long. And humour, laughing works. The last dimension is the physical self. It's obvious. Nutrition, exercise. Improve those 2 areas, and hopefully you'll live long. But the general rule for all of this is do any of that, but try small changes until the small changes become habits. It's absolutely why things like diets fail, why people will sign up for gym membership and not even get to the 3-month mark, let alone the 3-week mark for some people. So do very, very smallest things. And if it seems too hard in your head, break that task into smaller bites. So if it seems hard in your head, break that one task down into smaller things that are more manageable. And slowly, remember, well-being it's a journey, it's not a destination. It's something that we keep plodding along over the course of our life, and we keep having to shift. And if you go into the wrong direction, do a U-turn and come back. Don't go, oh, I give up altogether. Stuff my well-being. Okay, just do a U-turn like you would if you're on the road and go the different way. All right, I think that's probably enough, because I think I'm right on the 5. I could go more because I've got a bit more to talk about. Any questions before I finish up? Yes?
With regards to your statement you have given, comparison is killer of your own joy. But if you're living in the society and if you're trying to be good and upgrade your status and comparing yourself already, those people who already been more blessed and more settled down. So in that case, you will set your scale unconsciously. So how would we cope with that by looking at someone and getting some inspiration and trying to be on their position and on their well-beingness?
I think you sort of answered the question. You answered it in in your question, because it is really about we can look at someone and feel disheartened or dissatisfied in our life and not grateful for what we have when we compare ourselves to someone who we believe has more than us. Or you can go, absolutely good on that person for achieving what they've achieved, and I want to achieve that too, but I'm on the path behind them. So if you can use it and convert it to intrinsic motivation to go, I want to achieve success, and that's just a model of success for me. Does that make sense? But what some people will do, comparison is the killer of joy, when all you do is just compare and you don't follow that up with action that gets you nearer to where you want to go. And your goals might also be quite individual from the goals of that. Like some people might have external markers of success, but their goal in achieving that could be very different to yours. So come back to what your goals are, and is that the success that you want? And be flexible, because that might change over time. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Yes.
How to remove, rather completely delete the what if question from the mind?
How to delete?
What if question from the mind?
How to delete the what if question. All right. Step 1, catch it. Like with a butterfly net. You've got to catch yourself when you're doing it. And you know that typically there's certain situations where you're more likely to do it. You know, it could be holding yourself back from getting a job. What if I don't get the job? Well, then I'm going to feel bad about myself, so therefore I won't apply for the job. So just catch the what ifs. I say catch the what if and do it anyway. Like, don't let the little, impulse in your brain stop you from doing what actually you want to do. Yeah. And that's also about feel the anxiety and do it anyway, except if you're train surfing, don't do that. Okay. So think about, like, there's lots of little situations that we feel anxious in, and usually it has to do with new situations, or sometimes it's meeting new people, until you become very well versed in it. But often the new situation will provoke anxiety for most of us. That's pretty normal. That's our brain sort of going, what do you need to be careful of? How do you perform at your best level? So just catch it, notice it, and do it anyway, whatever you're going to do. Okay? Hope that helps. Any other questions? No? Because I'm just skipping to you.
With regards to your anxiety, this is something instantly comes according to the situation and scenario. Is that right?
Sometimes.
Yeah. So at that particular point or moment, how would we respond? Should we have given some time, or should we react at the same time?
Good question. Each situation will be different. So what should you do with anxiety when you notice it? Well, the first part is even noticing it and giving it a label. Like, what am I feeling right now? Is this anxious? Is it anxiety what I'm feeling? How do I know that? And usually there's something about a situation which might be common to you. So at certain periods of time I might feel anxious giving talks, and other times not. So if I do, I just know what it is, and I go, oh yeah, it's anxiety, to be expected. And just either ignore the symptoms or think about how it might be holding me back from doing my best, or that type of thing.